Hello all, welcome back to Project Mastery Podcast. We'll be covering cost management in today's topic. Let's say that your boss comes and says, I want to determine budget. Do you know how to determine budget? Do you know what are the components of budget? How do you estimate cost? Do you have a plan in place for managing cost? Do you know what are the types of cost? What is the input required to estimate cost? Let's get into the fundamentals. Before we talk about estimating cost, have you identified what you're going to estimate, how you're going to estimate, in which currency, whether it's going to be foreign currency or Indian currency? Have you identified the reporting format? Do you know what are the estimating techniques? Do you know what are the approved estimating techniques? What is the level of accuracy that is required? What is the level of precision that you need to estimate with? Have you found out what are the control thresholds? Have you identified the change control procedures? What are the change control procedures that you need to follow when there is a change to cost? Have you identified what is the information present on the control account? Do you know what are the funding decisions? For example, the project needs to be funded within the organization, or you need to secure funding from outside the organization. Have you referred to the cost management methods available in the organization? What are the cost management templates? Is there any guidelines that are available to deal with any changes that you have to come across in relation to resource cost rate, or when there's any fluctuation to exchange rate? Do you know what needs to be done? Are there any specific responsibilities that have been defined for carrying out the cost related activities? You will need to come up with answers for all of these questions. Once you have answers for all of these questions, you can probably document them, and this is what you call as a cost management. Once you have a cost management plan in place, you can go ahead with the next step where you will need to estimate the project cost. Now, what do you do when I say estimate project cost? Do you know what is involved when I say project cost? Project cost refers to cost of all the activities related to the project, cost of all the resources required to complete them. When I say project cost, it refers to material, labor. It will include the cost related to project management activities. It will include the cost related to all the risk efforts that you have taken. It will include costs related to quality efforts. You need to pay salaries for resources. There are additional costs like office administration expenses. You need to train the resources. There's a training cost involved. You need to procure equipment. There's a procurement cost involved, license cost, subscription cost, infrastructure cost. You need to host the product. You will either go with a SaaS product or a PaaS product, platform as a service, or you would have hosted on a cloud infrastructure, or you would have used a custom infrastructure. The infrastructure cost needs to be included, which you call as a hosting cost. You need to recognize the resources. There's a recognition program. Recognition cost needs to be added. You need to entertain the resources. You need to take them out for dinner, take them out for outing. So there is a entertainment cost associated. There's a meals cost associated. You will have a physical office location for which you need to pay rent, which is a fixed cost. There's a seat cost associated for every employee. You need to accommodate the seat cost. Variable cost is something that changes when the production changes. Example, materials and wages. Fixed cost like rent, electricity that you pay for the office premises. In a nutshell, you will need to include the cost estimate of all the project activities and the resources required to complete them. When you estimate project cost, you should always refer to EEF because there are market conditions, exchange rates, inflation, sources of supply that will impact your estimation. You will refer to OPA because you need to know what are the cost management templates, policies, procedures available. You will also have to refer to quality management plan because if there is a quality threshold that says 98% accuracy, then it will impact your funding because I may have to go with vendor 1, which gives me 98% accuracy. Vendor 2 gives me 100% accuracy, but it is costly. I will prefer vendor 1 because it is still within the quality threshold and it is less costly. You need to know what is the authorized scope that you are supposed to deliver, which is the scope baseline. You will also need to know what is the schedule baseline, what is the time frame within which you need to complete the project. You will have to refer to lessons learned documents to understand historically what is the average cost for doing a similar type of project. With all these inputs, you will be able to estimate the project cost. When we talk about estimating, There are two techniques available. One is top-down, one is bottom-up. When you talk about top-down estimate is also called as analogous estimate. You do it when the project is in initiation phase, when there is not much detailed information available. You are going to come up with a high-level project feasibility with the minimum level of information that is available. This is a very, very quick estimate. It is less accurate. It does not consider any differences between projects. Whenever there is a project with a lot of uncertainty, then it is impossible for you to compare the project with similar project. And in that case, analogous estimating may not work out well. So you do a top-down estimate with minimum high-level information available, or you do a bottom-up estimate. Bottom-up estimate means it's a more refined estimate, it's more accurate, but it is more time-consuming. You estimate the cost of an activity, you drill down the deliverables into a smaller piece of work, and then start estimating from the bottommost piece of work. This requires detailed planning. You will be able to easily get buy-in from the team, as these estimates are more accurate and more refined. When your boss comes and says you do an estimate, the question that you need to ask is, what should be the range? Does it need to be a high-level estimate or bottom-up estimate? What should be the range? It has to be plus or minus 15%, plus or minus 10%, or 25%, 78%. ROM means rough order of magnitude estimate. It is a high-level estimate that you do when the project is in the initiation phase. ROM estimate ranges are minus 25 to 75%. Whatever is known to you at that point in time, whatever minimum information you have, based on that you come up with this rough order of magnitude ROM high-level estimate. You also have another estimate called budget estimate, which is in the range of minus 10 to plus 25%. This is better than the ROM estimate. You have much better information available, a more detailed level of information available, so you're able to come up with a much better estimate than the ROM estimate, which is called the budget estimate. Once you keep reiterating and then replanning, you come up with more detailed planning. As and when you get more information, and when the planning gets refined, you come up with a definitive estimate. This you call it as a refined estimate, because it's going to have a range of only plus or minus 10%, or probably minus 5 to plus 10%. This will be the most accurate estimate for you. These are the estimate ranges that you need to be aware of when you estimate. Once you've estimated the project cost, you need to go to the next step, which is determining budget. When we say budget, it refers to the total cost of the project, total amount of funds that an organization needs to keep itself available to manage the project, total amount of funds that the organization needs to have in order to complete the project end to end. Before determining budget, you would have estimated cost, you would have come up with cost estimates, you would have come up with a basis for estimate, meaning you say what is the basis for coming up with this estimate. You would have made estimates based on certain assumptions, constraints. You would have made estimation based on techniques like top-down, bottom-up. You would have made use of certain tools. You would have made use of historical information. So you will have the basis of estimate as well as the cost estimates for all the activities. When you create a budget, you always start from the bottom. You start from the activity estimate. All the activities that have been estimated. You start from the activity estimates. Activity estimates roll up to work package estimates. Activities always get grouped to a particular work package. If you have activity 1 that costs $10, activity 2 that costs $20, both are grouped under work package 1. That means the cost of work package is $30. If you have activity 3, $30, activity 4, $30, these two activities are grouped under work package 2, then the cost of work package is going to be the aggregated cost of all the activities that belong to the particular work package, meaning the cost of work package 2 would be $60. Activity estimates roll up to work package estimates. Work package estimates will roll up to control account estimates. Control account is a manageable point where it's a point at which you're going to track cost. You're going to track the performance of the project in terms of cost, scope, schedule, and it's going to be a summation of the work packages. Just like how activities are grouped into work packages, they roll up to work packages. Work packages are also rolling up to control accounts. A control account can have multiple work packages. There can be only one control account a work package can belong to. You sum up the cost of the activities aggregated at work package level. You sum up the cost of all the work packages and aggregate them at a control account level. You can have one control account which can have multiple work packages. I can have one control account which can have 3 work packages, another control account which can have another 3 work packages. Totally I can have 6 work packages, 2 control accounts. But every work package is going to have individual activities. Activity estimates will roll up to work package estimates will roll up to control account estimates will roll up to project estimates. When you arrive at a project estimate, it is going to be a summation of all the control accounts. If I want to track project performance, if I want to track cost at a work package level, I can do that. If I want to track at an activity level, I can do it. If I want to track at a control account level, that also I can do it. And if I want to drill down further, I can find out what are the work packages pertaining to the control account, which work package is costly. Then I can drill down further to find out what are the activities pertaining to the work package, which particular activity is the costliest activity that's creating the higher cost for the particular control account. Once you arrive at the project estimate, which is the summation of all the control accounts, we need to add contingency reserve. Project estimates roll up to contingency reserve. I'm going to add contingency reserve to project estimate. Remember, when we spoke about risk management in a previous episode, we spoke about contingency reserve. Contingency reserve is a reserve that gets created as a part of contingency plan during risk management. So you need to add the contingency reserve to the project estimate, and finally we arrive at the cost baseline. Cost baseline will include contingency reserves. What is the difference between budget and cost baseline? It is management reserve. You are going to add management reserve to cost baseline so that you get the final cost budget for the project. Management reserve is a reserve that's been created for unknown risk, for risks that you have not foreseen. Contingency reserve is a reserve that has been created for risks that you have foreseen, for risks that you have already identified. It's a risk that you have planned to address. Risks that are unforeseen, that are not identified, that cannot be identified, you are going to create a management reserve. A project manager will have control over the contingency reserve, but he will not have control over the management reserve, which is something that you need to contact the senior leadership team. Hope this point is very clear. Activity estimates roll up to work package estimates roll up to control account estimates rolls up to project estimates. You're going to add contingency reserves to the project estimate, and you get a cost baseline. Cost baseline is the one which is used during EVM process, earned value management process. Cost baseline is what you're going to measure the project's success. You're going to have complete control of the cost baseline, and you're going to measure the project's success only with the cost baseline, which is authorized cost for executing the work. In addition to cost baseline, you're going to add management reserve, and that will give you the project budget. Once you have determined the budget, your job is not over. You need to see whether it's as realistic as possible, as accurate as possible. You need to refer to the historical information, check with experts. You need to do a funding limit reconciliation. Meaning, let's say that I don't have the funds to buy this particular software from the vendor, but this particular scope needs to be completed, and which is dependent on this vendor. Now, I'll be able to get the funds in the month of August. Then can I move the scope to August so that that particular scope which is dependent on the vendor will be completed, because I'll be having the funds to purchase the software and complete the scope. So you will need to move the scope to a different date because that's a funding limit. I don't have the funds to purchase the particular software in this month. So I'm going to check with the customer to make sure that that particular work gets moved to the next month where I'll have the required funds. We will also need to check whether there are any heuristics available. For example, heuristics says design should be 15% off build. Testing should be 25% off build. You need to go to the heuristics to find out whether you have come up with the right budget. After you have arrived at a budget, you need to reconcile the budget. Project budget is a time-phased plan. Once you have determined the budget, you need to check the project charter, business case, to find out whether there are any cost constraints and whether the budget is within the cost constraint. If not, you have to come up with options to overcome the budget overshoot, and you need to take it up with the leadership team in advance. If your project estimate is going to exceed the constraints, you need to explain to the management why there is a cost requirement cannot be met and what are the options available to bring it under control. It is the responsibility of the project manager to come up with the most realistic, accurate estimate. You will need to refer to ROI when you determine the budget. You need to refer to the benefits management plan to understand what are the benefits planned for this project, and you determine the budget. Once you've determined the budget, you need to measure the cost. You're going to track the cost. You're going to ensure that the project is going as per the cost baseline, as per the authorized cost baseline. What do you do when it comes to managing cost or when you monitor and control cost? You need to prevent unwanted changes. You have to take proactive actions. You have to take preventive actions to ensure there is no cost increase. You have to anticipate a cost increase in advance. If there is a change to cost, you need to follow the change control procedures. You need to implement the approved changes. You need to create a change request and go through the proper procedures. You have to find out what is the root cause for all the cost increase and make sure that the cost increase does not happen again in future. You will have to perform reserve analysis. Whenever you do risk planning, there is an increase in contingency reserve. There is a decrease in contingency reserve, which will impact the cost baseline. New risk getting added, obviously there will be new reserve. Sometimes the reserve is not utilized. So whenever a risk planning happens, there is a change to reserve. You need to monitor the reserve, analyze the reserve to see whether there is an increase or decrease in reserve, and this will impact the cost baseline. You will have to conduct earned value management techniques. EVM is a very important concept. That's a separate episode where I have covered in detail. So take your time to gain knowledge on EVM concepts. And when you're monitoring controlling, you're going to use EVM techniques to understand how the project is performing in terms of cost, schedule, time. You're going to convert the information into a progress report, and that particular progress report needs to be circulated to stakeholders. We have covered the fundamentals of cost management in this episode. We have come to the end of the episode. Hope the knowledge was valuable. Thank you for tuning in.